Hey guys, Dan here with today's daily quarantine video, and that is going to be this week's TV news and reviews show. Got 6 new shows on deck for you, as well as a little bit of news that is not necessarily coronavirus related, although some of it is. So let's just dive right in. So we start with the cancellations and renewals as usual. Like I said last week, a lot of these are going to be coming the first week of May for the networks to do their upfronts for the fall schedule. Although, with the coronavirus stuff going on, I'm not sure if networks are going to really have a handle on what will be on their fall schedule at this point. So maybe it won't be the 1st of May. But anyway, we do know that Duncanville has been renewed on Fox, which makes a lot of sense because the animated shows need usually, months and months of prep time for each episode, unless it's South Park, which still goes off, weekly they do a new episode. They write, create, and produce it all within a week. But for most other animated shows, they farm it out. So it's also helpful for Fox to be able to have a slate of animated shows that they don't have to worry about getting a huge production team behind, because you can farm that out to overseas, and they could just animate it and bring it back. So everybody can kind of do animation stuff in sort of solitude quarantine type of states. So that makes sense. They did cancel Deputy, the Stephen Dorff show, which I didn't get too much out of from the first episode, but that will now end after just 13 episodes, and they have all aired already. So if you were a fan of Deputy, you can still watch those episodes, I guess, on Hulu or whatever, but they will not be producing more. And then also Comedy Central has canceled Lights Out with David Spade, which was the 11:30 show. Since Colbert Report left, they have really struggled on Comedy Central to find an 11:30 companion piece for that show. For a while they did the Larry Wilmore show, the Nightly Show. They've had a couple other iterations in there, but nothing is really stuck. But the producers and David Spade are going to be shopping that show to other networks and platforms. So the show itself might not be dead, but it was canceled, at least for Comedy Central purposes. So let's talk about a little bit with the coronavirus stuff and how it is shaping up for the networks, because they now are sort of scrambling what to do. Already, we've talked about the fact that many shows have had their seasons cut 2, 3, 4 episodes short when the shutdown happened, and instead of saying, okay, we'll go back to work when everything's ready, they just all pretty much effectively said, yeah, I guess the season's going to be over at this point, and we'll just start fresh in the fall. So most shows are going that way, but the problem is it's leaving gaping holes in network schedules. They can do some reruns for a little while, like, for example, NBC is going to be running reruns all summer long of the Chicago Triple show, on Wednesdays. Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Med. They all perform well, even in repeats. And with the coronavirus shutdown, a lot of people are discovering shows that they didn't know existed. We talked about this the last couple of weeks. The ratings are up all over the board, all day parts, all types of shows, including even syndicated shows. For example, in the last 30 days, shows like Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz have shown double-digit increases from a month ago. So, they're all getting 11, 12 million eyeballs every single day, largely because of the coronavirus shutdown. So that's great, and those are shows that are evergreen. I mean, you can run a Dr. Phil episode from 5 years ago, and nobody would really know the difference. So that is kind of nice. Now, Jeopardy may be a little different. You can show some repeats, but the faithful Jeopardy fans watch every episode. So I don't know how long they can do that for. But of course, with Alex Trebek's health, that's in sort of flux anyway. But regardless of that, so here are some of the steps that networks are taking so they don't have to either run repeats all summer, or in some cases, like Fox has an entire season of Hell's Kitchen ready to go that I think was going to air over the summer, but they may decide to hold that back and put it in one of their holes in the fall programming, because right now we don't know what the fall schedule is going to look like. But for example, CBS is going to start running Sunday night movies and like big blockbuster movies, Forrest Gump, Indiana Jones, Titanic, and so for 4 or 5 weeks, I think it's 5 weeks. Mission Impossible, I think, is one of them as well. They're going to be from 8 to 11 Sunday night, so after 60 minutes. And then Titanic, because it's so long, actually will run the entire night, 7 to 11. And this is the first time in 12 years that a network has had a regular movie of the week kind of show. ABC was the last ones to do it in the 07-08 TV season, and that was on Saturday nights, The Dead Zone. But because cable started really being the go-to place for movies, and then at the same time, we started seeing DVD sales, or DVD prices, I should say, drop, and things like Netflix were just getting started as well in the 2000s, so you could get your DVDs by mail. But HBO was huge. Everybody had HBO back then. Plus, I mean, I didn't, but plus movies were running around the clock on stations like FX, TNT, USA. So there was just less of a demand for that on major networks. But it's interesting because I think movies like these could be given a whole new audience with this type of strategy, because there's a lot of kids at home right now that maybe have never seen an Indiana Jones movie, that are 10, 12 years old, never saw Mission Impossible, So I think it's really cool that they're doing that. Paramount owns CBS in a roundabout way, so they have that entire catalog to pick from. If NBC wanted to do the same, they could with Universal Films. If ABC wanted to do the same, they could with Disney Films. In fact, ESPN has been running movies lately, and they're all, like the classic Disney sports movies, but, Disney owns them. Fox is the only one without a movie house right now, which is interesting because, of course, you've got Fox, 20th Century Fox movies, but Disney bought them. So the Fox network is technically a standalone network, believe it or not. So they cannot access for free anyway their Fox movie content, which I think is very interesting. But with the whole conglomeration now of FX on Hulu, and Disney owns a lot of the FX, the Fox movies, so they've put those on Hulu. But Fox, the channel, I don't know. They may have to farm that out. But again, they have an entire night of animation that is working for them, and they've got a couple of reality shows that are already in the can as well. CBS also is going to be without Big Brother for the first summer in about 20 years. That's one of their absolute summer staples. They didn't film any of Big Brother for the season beforehand, so they're out on that. Now, they do have a full season, I understand, of Amazing Race, so they can run that this summer, but it'll be interesting that they don't have Big Brother for the summer. And reality shows overall, if they're contest-based and audience-focused, are going to be taking hits because they don't know when things will be up and running again. So American Idol, for example, I think we talked about this last week. American Idol has a few extra shows in the can, but they haven't done, obviously, the live shows yet, where they go in front of an audience. Now, that's something they could technically pull off because you're still calling from home and watching from home. They just wouldn't have the cheer of the audience. So they could maybe pull off some American Idol. Same with, I guess, America's Got Talent, which was filming a little bit for the season before the shutdown started. I know Heidi Klum was off sick for a couple of weeks. Those last weeks they were filming. So I don't know if we're going to get an America's Got Talent this summer. It's hard to say because obviously those live shows, the audience interaction is so important. One other thing CBS is doing that I think is interesting is we will have our first primetime quarantine scripted show, and it's their freshman drama, All Rise. I gave this an okay grade back in September when I watched the first episode, but this intrigues me, and I will probably check this out. It's a quarantine-specific episode of All Rise. It's going to air on May 4th, and they are going to film it remotely. So a lot of what's on the show will be remote, and I assume the woman, I can't remember the actress's name, but the woman that plays the judge will be, on the bench doing the court thing, and everyone will be sort of going on off of Zoom and off of FaceTime and these other things to plead their cases to her from what I read. So coronavirus will actually be a plot point in this episode, and that will be, I guess, really the first major scripted show to tackle it, because everything else has been shut down. So that will be interesting. ABC is continuing with their specials. They were hoping to do live specials, every month. They started with a couple last year. They did the Norman Lear thing, and then they repeated that this year with another couple shows. And then they had the Oscars, and then they did a live episode of the Connors. But obviously that stuff has ground to a halt. But they do have a Gary Marshall tribute in the pipeline that they've been working on. Some of it has been pre-taped, and some of it will be new segments taped from people's houses, I guess. But, Gary Marshall, most of his shows ran on ABC. Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy. And so there's going to be a big tribute to him, and a lot of his movie actors will be a part of that as well. Richard Gere from Pretty Woman, and some of his big name movie stars. So that'll be interesting. That airs in May, I believe. Was the day on that? It's a Tuesday, because I remember thinking either the Connor season will be over or they'll preempt it yet again. May 12th, Tuesday, May 12th. So I believe actually the Connors will be over by then for the season. So that's all the coronavirus scheduling stuff. The last thing I want to talk about is This Week in Reboots. We haven't had any reboot news for a while because everything's sort of at a standstill those first few weeks. Networks were too busy struggling to figure out what they were going to put on the air rather than making deals. But Disney Plus is bringing back yet another feature from the dead. Usually it's been movies that they're doing, like they're doing a Turner and Hooch show, for example, and a Mighty Ducks show. But this one comes from an old television show, Doogie Howser, MD, one of my favorite shows growing up. I had such a crush on Neil Patrick Harris. We're about the same age, so I always enjoyed watching the Doogie Howser show. And I went through it actually maybe about 5 or 6 years ago when the entire box set came out. And it actually holds up. It's pretty good television. So the new one is going to be a half white, half Latina girl. Half Asian and half white. And her character is going to be called Doogie Kilahoa, MD. And so she is, 16. So it's basically a reboot. It's not going to be in the same world as the original Doogie Howser. It's a straight up reboot. And she will be playing, the new version of what we know as Doogie Howser. So it'll be interesting. It's from, speaking of Neil Patrick Harris, it's from the producers of How I Met Your Mother. So, there's the Neil Patrick Harris connection there. But that will be interesting. So Disney Plus, never really releases dates on things when they announce anything. So I have no idea. My guess would be this will be in 2021, especially with the shutdown and everything pushed back. So I would say the earliest we'll see this is probably like summer of 2021. But that's what's going on with Disney Plus. So that's our news. Let's move into our shows. Before I was doing a video every single day of the week, these were typically about an hour. I would spend about 7 to 10 minutes on each show I was reviewing, and then about 15 minutes of news. But now I'm trying to sort of bust through things a little quicker, so none of my videos are longer than like 45 minutes since I'm doing them every day. So let's get into it. The first one I want to talk about is Broke. This is a new comedy on CBS. Thursday nights, it stars good old Paulie Perrette from NCIS, and then it also stars Natasha Leggero and Jamie Camille, who I was not familiar with the name, but I knew who he was. He was on Jane the Virgin. He played Rogelio on there. And he's been in some other things as well. But in typical CBS fashion, this is a multi-camera laugh track comedy. And I say laugh track. I do think most of them are filmed in front of an audience, but I think it's always sweetened by a laugh track as well. But believe it or not, this is not from Chuck Lorre. That's usually their go-to person. It's produced by Paulie Perrette herself and Steve Sandoval, and then executive produced by a bunch of other people. But Alex Hirschlag is the main person here. He produced and wrote on Will and Grace in the original set of the series. So that's, I guess, what he's best known for. He won an Emmy for that. But the basic premise is we've got these two sisters, Paulie Perrette and Natasha Leggero, who lead very different lives. Paulie Perrette has 2 kids and is sort of struggling to get by as a single mother. And Natasha Leggero left when they were young, married rich, and now they are back in town. Why? Because her rich husband's dad cut them off. And so now they are going to be staying with Polly Perrette and her family to form a new blended family. This show is The Pits. I like a lot of the people involved. Now, I never watched NCIS, but I always thought Polly Perrette was, a cool chick. She just promotes that cool vibe. And Natasha Leggero, I know mostly from Comedy Central stuff, whether it be a stand-up special or her roasts. But just this is the classic, like, dumbed down CBS comedy. The jokes are either obvious or in poor taste or just not funny. And I admit I did get a couple of laughs out of this, but like her son reminds me of the one kid on the ABC show Single Parents. It's very like cookie cutter, like, oh, I'm a genius kid kind of thing. They try to tug at the heartstrings a little at the end of the episode where the kid's like really, the sisters are sort of unhappy with the situation, and the kid is, doing a project about family for school, and oh, it's so touching that he's so happy to have everybody together, and da 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 da. It follows in that classic pattern of basically all of those CBS laugh track family sitcoms. And some of them are good. Look, Man with the Plan, I like. It's corny, but I like Matt LeBlanc in it, and I like Kevin Nealon, and even the kids are funny in it. I like Man with a Plan. I know that it's stupid, but I enjoy watching it. I laugh. This is definitely more in the, like, I don't even want to say Bob Hart's Abishola, because I feel like that at least had potential from where it started. And my good friend Melissa, who's been on this channel before discussing TV with me, she actually is really into that show and said, I should give it another shot. So, and I sensed maybe some possibility from the first episode of that show. This just seems like real lowest common denominator comedy. Being naughty just to, get away with it. There's like a food fight kind of thing with the two sisters that's like sort of funny, but everything about this is like sort of almost something. But what it's not is funny. And that's a real bummer for a comedy show. Especially, it's on a night where I actually like the shows that are on that night on CBS, because Young Sheldon I enjoy, and Mom I also enjoy. And it's on that same night as those shows. So to me, I don't know. Shows have tried and failed in that slot. Like last year they had a show called Fam that I thought was also horrible. CBS, though, is another one. They tend to like cancel the ones I like the most. Not always. I do like that show The Neighborhood too. That's very like classic sitcom-y. Sort of lowest common denominator show, but I do like The Neighborhood. But like that show Happy Together with Damon Wayans Jr., I really enjoyed. That only lasted half a year. So we'll see where this one goes. If my taste is any indication, it will be a 7-year, wonder on this on this show. But I did not care for Broke. It gets a D from me. So up next, we're going to move to, let's go to Netflix and talk about Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. Now, this is a 4-part miniseries. I told you guys I was going to try and watch all 4 parts to give it a full review, which I rarely get to do, just time-wise, but with the Corona shutdown, I'm trying to spend a little more time catching up on some things. But as a result, I'm also doing a video every day, so there's more for me to watch out there as well to review. But I did get to 2 episodes of this, so I've seen half of the miniseries, which, to be honest, is more than I usually go off of for my reviews. So this is Octavia Spencer starring as the titular character, Madam C.J. Walker, and she basically starts her own empire in the 1920s. I think it starts in 1908. So I guess maybe the late 1900s, early 19-teens. And basically she is a true person who is a pioneer in the black hair industry. which at the time, there wasn't really a lot for. Slavery had just been over about 40 or 50 years, and nobody had really cornered that market yet. And she was having trouble with her own hair and baldness and stuff like that. And so she found something that worked for her from the lady she did laundry for, and she was a real stuck-up bee about it, the woman was. So C.J. Walker said, well, forget this, I'm going to do my own thing, and ended up moving to a new area and getting her own clientele that way. And I didn't watch the last 2 episodes, but I do know just from the history of this person that she was America's first self-made black millionaire. So obviously she does succeed, but it is not without some bumps in the road. In just the first couple of episodes, her house burns down where she's doing the hair stuff out of. So that burns to the ground. Her old nemesis that she used to do laundry for comes into town and opens up a really nice, posh salon place that isn't out of her house, and is trying to steal the competition that way. And also, Madam C.J. Walker is having an uphill climb because her husband feels very emasculated by the whole thing, and he is played by Blair Underwood, who I love, as always. So he's, sort of drops everything to help her out in her business, but he also feels very emasculated by the whole thing, so she's having trouble finding sponsors and finding people to endorse the product. So it's an interesting journey for sure. Tiffany Haddish also co-stars as Madam's daughter, and she seems actually a little bit out of place here. I like Tiffany Haddish typically, and I feel like I've seen her do dramatic things before. Mostly she's hilarious and she's great in comedies, but I feel like I've seen her do 1 or 2 dramatic things lately too. But it played differently as it plays here, and I'm not sure if that's because she's going up against, literally, in my opinion, one of the greatest actors of our generation, Octavia Spencer. She is, a powerhouse in everything she does, and it is hard to, I think, match acting styles with her and acting abilities. I actually think Blair Underwood does a very good job being close to Octavia's level, and the nemesis is good, but she's also sort of cartoony in a way that they present her as the villain. So it's sort of hard to match Octavia, scene for scene that way when you're being written as just such a classic villain, and so Tiffany Haddish is okay here, but I feel a little miscast. She's a little out of place. I don't think she can hit the same dramatic elements that some of these other top actors can. But I do love her. I mean, I always think she's funny and stuff. I forget. I'm going to look up what was the dramatic thing I saw her in, because I remember thinking like, oh, this is interesting. Like usually she's doing comedy, but she's good in this, whatever it is. Yep, Girls Trip was great. Night School. It was The Kitchen. Yeah, well, The Kitchen was not a good movie, but the script was horrible. She actually did a real good job in it. All those women did. Melissa McCarthy as well, who we've seen her, dabble in drama very well, too. But yeah, that's what it was. The Kitchen. Bad movie, but good Haddish performance. Here, I think because the level of acting is a little bit higher, she just doesn't hit the bar. On the whole, I think it's a really riveting story, and I salute Netflix for only doing 4 episodes of this. They're each between like 48 and 50 minutes. So again, I harp on this all the time. I think Netflix and HBO need to just tone it down with like the 8-hour, 10-hour miniseries. It's all stretched out. This 4 episodes seems like the exact right amount. Total, when you cut out the, there's no commercials, but I mean, if you put them end to end, since they're about 48 to 50 minutes apiece, it's like a little over 3.5 hours for the whole thing. That seems like a good time for that. It's not going to be over long. Everything is, you're not moving too slowly. Everything seems good. It's just a little bit run of the mill. It's very like, okay, we're keeping black people down, and it's the turn of the century, but oh, black people are also keeping other black people down, and it's certainly tread upon ground. But this character's great. Octavia Spencer is phenomenal as always. I really think she's going to emerge in the next few years as really just one of the top actors out there. Everything she's in, she's just great. From The Help to Hidden Figures to even that horror movie Ma last year. It was corny, but God, was she having so much fun with that role. She was just eating that script up. So I love her in it, but I think it's a little bit generic for sure. The tension, the beats, they're all things we've seen before. But, the whole, like, emasculating thing adds an interesting twist to it. And the whole, young mother thing adds something to it because she says how she had her daughter at 15. So it's like, the ages are very close. They're all sort of a close-knit family age-wise and everything else. So I liked this. I think Self-Made is good. I think it could have been better with some rewriting and maybe a recast for Tiffany Haddish's character. But I leave Self-Made with a B. So we'll go back to Netflix in a little bit, but first I want to talk about Tales from the Loop. This is over on Amazon Prime, and this is one of the most interesting concepts for a show I've ever heard of. It's a science fiction show, and it is based not on a book, not based on a comic book, not based on a novel. It is based on paintings by a Swedish artist by the name of Simon Stålenhag. And I was not familiar, so, I kind of looked at some of the paintings. And, it's real, like, sort of trippy stuff a little bit. And so what the creators of this show have done, and that would include, let's see, who did this? Nathaniel Halpern, who I'm not really familiar with, but he developed it and wrote it. I don't think he directs it, but Matt Reeves is the executive producer, and we know him from things like the Planet of the Apes movies, the recent ones, and his first major thing was Cloverfield, the first Cloverfield. So, so Matt Reeves is very much in that, like, sci-fi sort of adventure realm. And he puts that to great use here as executive producer. Basically, we explore in this an entire universe where there's this thing called the loop that we are explained at the beginning by a great actor, Jonathan Pryce. And I don't know if he is in this as like a recurring character or what, but he's sort of like the narrator. But, he's been in everything from Evita to the Pirates of the Caribbean, and he's been around. And then Rebecca Hall plays Loretta, sort of the main character. We've seen her in a lot of things. Do I like Rebecca Hall? She doesn't always pick great projects, but she's always pretty likable as an actor. Even when she's playing like a villain, you're kind of like, ooh, she's a good villain, though. I kind of like her. So she's got that going on. And then this newcomer, Abby Ryder Forston, plays the young version of her. And she was in the Ant-Man movie. She plays like Ant-Man's daughter. But anyway, so the loop is essentially a machine that unlocks the mysteries of the universe, making things, that previously were only in sci-fi books and movies, they make them real. And so I only watched the pilot episode, but is it 10 episodes? All 10 episodes are up for you to watch right now. I'm sorry, there's 8. So you can watch all 8 episodes, and essentially each one has sort of a different, not premise, because it's all based around the loop, but as the title might indicate, Tales from the Loop, they're all different stories, and each one, from an interview I read with the producers, leads from a different painting. So, the idea stems from the painting, and then the script comes out of that, which I think is freaking cool. We've not really seen anything of that ilk before, to my knowledge. I certainly haven't. I think the episode is slow, the first one anyway, and And I probably should have watched 2 episodes of this just to get a more balanced. I'm not positive it's an anthology series. I don't think it's an anthology because I think a lot of these same characters are going to be in different episodes. But usually if it's an anthology, I'll watch 2 or 3 just to get sort of a baseline for it. I did not do that here. I just watched the first one, but I found it very slow, and things did not get resolved. So I can't imagine that these are all going to be like standalone episodes. But what I liked about the slowness is that it is very methodical. It could have. Look, they could have maybe trimmed 5 minutes off it. Instead of being 50 minutes, this could have been 45 minutes, let's say, to sort of ease some of those slower parts. But what's great is this thing has an amazing score. Philip Glass does the score, and it's haunting. It fits the tone of the show perfectly. It fits these characters well. It fits the mystery well of what's going on. And I liked Jonathan Pryce as the narrator, too. I thought he right away kind of set the creepy vibe of it. I think there's... this is a heady show. If you like your sci-fi, kind of dense, I think this might be a winner for you. I am sort of hit or miss with that. Sometimes I really like it. Like I like it in that show Devs that is currently on FX. That I guess they've probably run 3 or 4 of them by now. I really like that show, but then there's other things, mainly movies, I guess. Like The Witch, I thought was a really slow movie. In its approach, and Midsummer I thought was very slow at times, but this is a cool kind of, I don't know, the difference to me is, I guess, my interest level, and you have to sort of hook people right away. Like The Witch, for example, I didn't feel like had anything to hook me. The last 10 minutes was really cool and interesting, but what leads up to that? Here, it's more like there's spots in the middle, or 15 minutes in, 28 minutes in, 35 minutes in. I'm just picking numbers, but, where it's definitely slows a little bit, and you're like, okay, we can move it a little, but not really that much. It's definitely thought-provoking sci-fi, and I think the concept is just fantastic. So I leave Tales from the Loop with an A-. I thought it was really, really cool. So up next, we've got Home Before Dark. We go over to Apple Plus for this. And this is a mystery drama show, and the basic premise is this family lives in Brooklyn, and they move to a small lake town that her father left years and years ago. And why did he leave? Well, we sort of figure that out along the way. But his daughter, who is, I guess, 9 or something, 9 or 10, and she's based on a real-life person that is a young, or was, I guess she's grown now, but a young girl detective sort of thing. And so here we have Brooklyn Prince as the young girl detective, and you may have seen in movies like The Turning, which was a horrible movie, but she was real good in it. And she also was in a great movie called The Florida Project. She was the sort of lead girl in that movie. So basically, she uncovers in this first episode that there has been a murder in this town. It is a cold case, and she wants to get to the bottom of it. But in the meantime, she's being bullied at school for being a super weirdo, outcast, and all of this. So that's the basic premise. There are, I think, 10 episodes of this. Am I right on that? Yes, there's 10 episodes of Home Before Dark, and they are all up now. Apple TV is doing the thing where it's like sometimes they put up the first 3 and then, one a week. But I guess, I don't know if that was the plan from the start on this, and if they just thought, well, everybody's home with the coronavirus, let's just put all 10 of these out at once, or if that was always the plan. Because some of their shows, they do release all at once. So I'm not sure what the logic was originally, but in any case, all 10 episodes of this are up. A couple things I liked about it. I like that we have a show that the whole family can watch. I mean, it's dark, there's a murder and, we're investigating things, but there's not people, going around cursing all the time. I get sort of tired of that as a premise of Netflix and stuff, just because you can curse up a blue streak, sometimes people like to watch shows with their families, everybody, and just because a show isn't necessarily for little kids doesn't mean it can't be family oriented. And so, like, I love the Lemony Snicket show that Netflix did. That was it was dark for sure. There's a lot of like dark stuff going on, but I would say it was a very family friendly show in the respect that the whole family could sit down and watch it. I think this episode does have one bad curse word, but it's not the F word, so I think it's good for families. But again, how do families find things like this? It's not like it's advertised as like, oh, check out Apple TV's new family show. So I'm not sure. But anyway, it's not necessarily a critique of the program, but a critique of the marketing, I guess. But I like that about this show. That's one of my positives about it, that it is family friendly, even with sort of a dark content. And I love this little girl's acting. She was great in The Turning. That was a good movie up until the last like 5 minutes, where it just ends abruptly and doesn't make any sense. So I would recommend against that movie. But she is like a real captivating girl. She's got a real knack for. She's one of these girls who seems a lot older. They act a lot more mature than they really are. Like, I feel like Dakota Fanning was one of those, she's just like kind of this old soul. And so she can go toe-to-toe with these adults in these scenes that you don't really expect, and so I think that gets played off very well. My negatives are that the show is way too much about rah-rah girl power. Everything is very female-centric because she is a girl. Like, all the songs on the soundtrack are, if they're not by women originally, they're covers of songs that are now by women. They were originally by dudes. Like Creep by Radiohead is one of them, and they play that real, like the slow version of Creep that they did in, I think it was The Social Network had it for their preview. But, it's that kind of thing. And, look, I don't mind girl power. That's fine. Like, it didn't bother me in Captain Marvel, for example, because that is a very, like, female empowerment type movie, just like Black Panther was, black empowerment kind of movie. But my issue with it is the same issue I have with Bad Boys. Like, I reviewed all the Bad Boys movies the other day, and for me, like, that rah-rah macho bullcrap, it is not... For me, it's not that welcome. Like, I like something that's more well-rounded. Like, I don't have to have all, chick rock on this soundtrack to like this young girl character. Like, it doesn't need to be like that, So I thought that was a little distracting. Also, I think the people at school are unnecessarily cruel to her. Like, yeah, she's an outcast and she's weird, but it's like there's such classic, like, TV show archetype, bullies at school kind of thing, and then she, like, stands up on the table to, like, announce, that she doesn't care if she's a weirdo or whatever, and, some people, like, start to clap, and then, of course, there's those bullies that start throwing food at her. It's just like, all right, well, we've seen that a million times, so there's some generic aspects of it. Also, I like the mystery element of it. I think... I don't know if they're going to be able to stretch it out really over 10 episodes, but clearly her dad has something to do with it, and that's why he left the town to begin with. We have no idea what that is in this first episode, but just by his reactions, he either, did it or knows the person or something. There's something here that we're going to, I'm sure, uncover, just not yet, obviously. So I thought Home Before Dark was good. I think it's enjoyable for families for sure if they're looking for something they can watch together for 10 episodes during the quarantine that will be mostly curse free, but still with a little bit of edge to it. You're not watching a baby show here. So for that I enjoy it. I'm going to give Home Before Dark a B-. Up next, we've got Vagrant Queen. This is on the Sci-Fi Network. Oh my gosh, do I just not watch anything from Sci-Fi? But I think because of doing this podcast and reviewing pretty much everything that comes on TV these days that's new, I think this is actually my second sci-fi show that I've watched. And that's like ever. Like, I just, I don't seek these shows out, and I haven't had cable for years, so... it would be something where I would have to seek it out. But this is based on a graphic novel. Or I guess maybe it's technically actually a comic book, not a graphic novel. But the novel is named the same thing, Vagrant Queen. And basically we've got Adrienne Ray here, who is mostly a newcomer. She's most known for this role, but she was in Superfly. I think she played the daughter in Superfly. And she's done a few other shows as well. She was in Brockmire. She was in Atlanta for a couple episodes. So she plays the lead here, Alita, and basically she is a former queen. She grew up as a queen, but has since been ostracized, and since then has lived her life as a scavenger and an outlaw. But she has an old frenemy, Isaac, played by Tim Rosen, who shows up with something to say about her long-lost mother, and so now we're on a quest to sort of find the truth and all of that. It's very like, I got Mandalorian wannabe vibes from this show, both with the style of the aliens and also just with the general premise, I suppose, and just sort of the rogue person at the helm. Mandalorian is a far better done show. At least it was more interesting. But what I like about Vagrant Queen is this show knows what it is. It is corny. It's funny in some aspects, and it's definitely not taking itself too seriously, and I like that. But it's not in like a Sharknado kind of way where it's like, okay, we made this to purposely be crappy. It's not crappy. It just knows what it is, and it's sort of a wink wink to the audience, like, hey, have some fun with us, we're having fun. That doesn't always work, and it doesn't even always work for this show, but the lead actress does a good job sort of conveying that vibe, and I do like her interactions with the aliens. The effects are okay. They're better than what I thought would be on the Sci-Fi Channel. So that's a plus. But other than that, one negative is I didn't really find any of the characters likable. Certainly not the main characters. So I didn't really find myself invested in the story that much or rooting for her that much because of that. Obviously in future episodes I would hope that we would get more into her backstory as a former queen. And what that means to her now, but the pilot episode was certainly a mixed bag because I had fun watching it, but I don't ever really want to revisit these people again. I don't really care about their plight that much. So it's definitely a mixed bag, but it is better than I thought it would be. I mean, I think sci-fi originals, and I think Sharknado and that kind of crap. And maybe I shouldn't, maybe that's a preconceived notion for me, but that means I can be pleasantly surprised by things, and I always enjoy that too. So I will leave Vagrant Queen with a C+. So finally we have, go back to Netflix, and we have the Iliza Schlesinger Sketch Show, which I've always had a speech impediment with my SHs and my CHs, and so it's not easy for me to say the Iliza Schlesinger Sketch Show. But this is up on Netflix now. It's 6 episodes, and they're all between 18 and 20 minutes. So you can knock out this entire run in 2 hours or less if you'd like. I watched 2 episodes of this, and I'm glad I did, because the first one I really didn't care for. But I like her. I've seen her stand up. I believe I've seen her on some Comedy Central roasts as well. So I decided, since these are so short, I have a little extra time, I'm going to give the second episode a go as well and see where I fall within that. And truth be told, I'm glad I did, because I liked the second episode better than the first. Essentially, it is a sketch show, but there's sort of like a running thread throughout, and that is that the opening shot is like a Netflix type of like browser, and you're clicking on different shows, and then the shows become essentially the sketches. So, there's like one about female jackass, and then there's another one in the first episode where she does, it's called Husband Wife, where, she becomes as gross as a man, once they get married. talking about how big her poops are and stuff like that. And then the second episode is more of the same, although there was a recurring gag they did twice, or maybe even three times in that second episode, where it's like a comedy lecture kind of, and the man in charge is telling them like women aren't funny, this and that. That didn't seem to be like a TV show parody. It just seemed to be a sketch. So maybe it's not all under that concept. I'm not sure, but there's like a cooking show parody, and there's a commercial parody, and all that kind of stuff. I think the show has some interesting premises. Like, some of the sketches have interesting premises that either don't go anywhere or don't go far enough, because some of them are real short. Some of them are like 90 seconds, 70 seconds. Some of them are very short. And then some of them just go on too long and they try to milk it. Like, it seems like, so far at least, of the two episodes, each episode has one like 6-minute sketch, and then all the others are like 2 minutes or less, basically. So I don't know. There needs to maybe be a better balance there. Like, the one in episode 1 was this board meeting, and they were all eating peaches, and they were on this conference, or nectarines or something, and you couldn't tell what they were saying because everybody was eating too many nectarines. And I don't have a 9-to-5 like business job, so, but I've never seen that be a conceit for sitcoms or anything, like where everybody's eating so much at the meeting that they, there was the Seinfeld gag, I guess, with the shrimp, but is that like really a known problem, like an everyday life problem that people joke about, is that people are eating too many pieces of fruit at the meeting so you can't understand anything? Like, it was an interesting concept, but it just went on and on and on and on for like 6 minutes, and I'm like, all right, well, I can't relate to this, and it's not that funny. But the second episode, I laughed more for sure. I thought the concepts in the second episode were better, more executed well. That sentence was not executed well, but you know what I mean. So I think this is definitely a mixed bag. But I think, she's going for it for sure. I mean, she's in every sketch, and she's got, different wigs and different accents and this and that. And I just don't think it's found its groove yet. But it's interesting. And I'm glad, again, I'm glad to see, Netflix is doing episodes on the same timetable as a normal network. After commercials now, shows are about 20, 21 minutes. So this is a quick, like, in and out. Both times that I watched it, I was like, oh, that's over already? So it did, like, kind of fly by, and I think that's because, of the quick cuts of the sketches, too. So I will leave the Iliza Schlesinger Sketch Show with a C. I think there's potential here, but they certainly have not found quite where it is yet. So that's going to do it. We did make it in about 45 minutes, a few minutes over, but that's good. These are usually my longest videos of the week, the TV news and reviews, so I'm not surprised that we went a little long. Tomorrow is going to be my Quibi review. Is Quibi worth it? We're going to ask. And that is the new thing that just appeared on our phones last week. It's for phone only. You do have to download it, but you get a free 90-day trial with it, so you can at least test it out. But I've been seeing commercials with Chrissy Teigen on it. A couple of the people that have shows on Quibi have been doing commercials for it, so hopefully you've heard of it. And everything's like, it's called Quibi because it's quick bites, so everything's like 8 minutes, 10 minutes per show, or per episode, I should say. So I'm gonna not do reviews show by show. I think we're just going to do a whole overview of like what you get with Quibi and how good each thing is, and maybe a few of my favorite shows on it. And we'll do it that way. But that's going to be my review tomorrow. Then Saturday, I will do the new movies released for the week on demand and whatnot. Trolls World Tour bypassed movie theaters completely and is going directly to download at home. So I will have a review of that, and there's a few other things out there recently. I think Call of the Wild is now out, and a few others. So that will be Saturday, and then we'll see as our weeks progress here. I'm finding things to review for you every darn day. So keep it locked here on the channel, and please subscribe if you haven't yet. Comment below too. I love hearing from you guys. So that'll do it. Thanks so much for watching. Be safe. Bye.